Hello. All right, everyone. Thank you guys so much for joining us tonight. We really appreciate it. We know you have a lot of places and a lot of things that you could be doing with your Thursday evening, and so we truly appreciate it that you're spending it with us. As you know, tonight is our March open house. We are featuring Teguma Nicholas of Maverick Data, founder and managing partner. Teguma is an accomplished leader with over a decade of experience implementing enterprise solutions that turn complex data into actionable insights. As founder of Maverick Data, am I saying data? Do you say data or data? Data, okay, just being sure. We're all on the same page. She partners with organizations to deliver tailored analytics platforms that drive operational improvements and measurable outcomes. By aligning data strategies with business priorities, she's helped organizations streamline processes, enhance decision-making, and achieve sustainable growth. She holds a master's degree in data science and a wide range of certifications reflecting her expertise in navigating and integrating various tech stacks to meet evolving needs. Beyond her professional achievements, Teguma is deeply committed to advancing the data community and fostering inclusivity in tech. She has delivered TED Talks on pivotal topics such as data responsibility and AI bias, advocating for ethical and equitable use of technology. And tonight, she's here to talk to us about how the best person for the job is often a rigged system. Ladies and gentlemen, Teguma Nicholas.
That was fantastic. I'm like, oh, I want to meet her. She sounds great. Thank you. I don't trust these steps. All right. Whew. Stay. All right. Work hard enough. Can you hear me? Testing, 1, 2, 1, 2. Mic check, mic check. Okay. Work hard enough and you'll succeed. It sounds comforting, but the truth of it is it's not quite that simple. It's kind of like Santa Claus, right? It's not that simple. Just believing doesn't fix it. Tonight, we're going to pull back the curtain on an uncomfortable truth that meritocracy and the idea that the best person always rises to the top is a fallacy. It's flawed, it's a flawed ideology, and it's often unfairly rigged. Lost my train of thought just like that. But recognizing that meritocracy doesn't always deliver fairness is just the beginning. People often think equity is having a seat at the table, but it's so much more than that. It's about being heard, being supported, and having the tools to make a difference once you get there. Access is step one. Impact is what we're really after. And data is the most effective tool you have to drive that impact. From identifying pay gaps, tracking promotion patterns, and even surfacing who's getting those stretch opportunities. Data moves the conversation from feelings to facts. And when you do that, come on, yes. And when you do that, inequities become a lot harder to ignore. So today, I'm going to talk to you about the myth of meritocracy and how the best person for the job is a rigged system. Walk with me. Picture it. Sicily, 1929. My girl. If you watch the Golden Girls, you'll get it. If you don't, just pretend you get it. Okay? Golden Girls is top tier. But seriously, you have two resumes side by side with identical education, experiences, and skills. Both even claim to love hiking, because we're just putting anything on resumes these days. The difference, one says Jane, the other John. Any guesses who gets more callbacks? Me? Okay, it's John. So statistically, John is likely to receive 30% more callbacks, interviews, and job offers than Jane, despite identical credentials. Similarly, a landmark study by Bertrand and Mullin-Nathan found that candidates with African American sounding names received 50% less callbacks than their white sounding counterparts. Ain't that something? Clearly, the playing field isn't as level as we think it is. Speaking of names, fun fact, about 80% of Tegumas are Japanese. So you can imagine what my hiring, I need you to cut the giggling, okay? You can imagine what my hiring experience was like before tools like LinkedIn were available, where you could see what the person looked like before you met them. I'd show up to a job interview. Hiring manager is expecting an Asian man named Nicholas Teguma. In walks a 6-foot black woman, right? Now we're just blinking at each other. I'm looking at you, looking at me, looking at you. It's awkward for everybody. But biases they're not just limited to human judgment. Amazon infamously developed an AI hiring tool that downgraded resumes that referenced women's activities, because historically, fewer women held technology roles. Was the algorithm intentionally sexist? No. But it perpetuated historical biases found in the data. And if we loop of waiting to be considered ready, while those already determined or labeled leadership material rise ahead. Quick story time. I worked at a client where I was the director of analytics for like a year and a half. I managed a team of 40 people across the US, UK, India, and Brazil. I was clear about my ambitions, and I made my impact known every week with concrete, measurable data. But when I communicated to my leadership that I wanted a director role, I was met with, "You're not quite ready. You've only been in the role for about a year and a half. We need to see you demonstrate that you can do it long term." Now, wait a minute. I need to demonstrate it again? Longer term than this? How much time are we talking? Make it make sense. I'm already performing the duties of the role for a client that is paying you way more money than you're paying me. They tried to hire me, but can't because of our contractual obligations, so I keep getting extended every quarter. So I am qualified to lead an analytics organization for a Fortune 100 biotech company. but I'm not qualified to work here? That doesn't make sense to me. That didn't make sense to me. And this isn't just my experience. It's a symptom of a larger issue. So the truth is, we often choose candidates based on what we instinctively like, a concept called likability or affinity bias. But likability is subjective, it's intangible, and it is deeply influenced by unconscious bias. It quietly shapes decisions under comfortable terms like culture fit, masking deeper inequities. Affinity bias is one of many types of hiring biases. We'll talk through the next three. There's unconscious bias, which is the automatic assumptions or stereotypes that sometimes we don't even recognize that we hold. They're often based on race, gender, age, among other factors. For example, automatically assuming that leadership skills are primarily in men. Oh, goodness, scared me up. I didn't know if I needed to run or what. Next, we're going to move on to the halo effect, which is allowing one positive quality like an Ivy League education or a previous employer to overshadow potential negatives and skill gaps, making us overlook more suitable candidates. So while Ivy League educations are wonderful, at the end of the day, when you graduate with your bachelor's degree in paper mache, it's the same one from Harvard as it is from OSU. So understanding the subtle ways that bias influences hiring helps us make better decisions. Am I still on this slide? Because meritocracy depends entirely on fairness. But fairness cannot exist if the tools we use contain hidden bias. So in essence, meritocracy can only be as fair as the biases we're willing to challenge. Hidden bias has real costs. Let's talk about pay equity. Women earn 82 cents. Okay. Women earn 82 cents for every dollar earned by men. And Black women earn 64 cents. So that small gap over a 40-year career becomes hundreds of thousands of dollars in retirement, financial security, generational wealth, and home ownership. It also has societal costs. Think about leadership and decision-making power. Diverse teams consistently produce stronger outcomes. And according to McKinsey's 2020 diversity report, companies with diverse leadership are 33% more profitable, but only 10% of Fortune 500 executives are women, and fewer than 5% are Black. This imbalance disrupts growth and innovation. Like many of you, I'm sure, I experienced bias early on in my tech journey. Despite measurable successes, a senior leader said that I wasn't leadership material. And it took someone standing in the gap for me and working to change that bias to open doors for me, because my performance wasn't enough. I needed sponsorship. Many talented individuals are overlooked because someone assumes they don't fit a biased definition of success. This highlights a critical point. Equity means more than representation. It means access, support, and accountability. We've moved past the point of celebrating firsts. The question needs to be, are we creating environments where women can stay and grow and lead? Because equity only exists when the org chart is reflective of society and the systems work for everyone. So, let's go back a second. If meritocracy is a myth, let's create a better reality. So here are some 5 actionable steps that you can take right away. Demand transparency. Salesforce publicly conducts annual pay audits and openly corrects disparities. This creates more equitable pay and greater trust because transparency forces fairness. Redefine merit. Terms like culture fit are vague, subjective, and biased. Follow Google's lead. Clearly outline measurable competencies and skills. And when you're in your hiring and promotion discussions and you hear terms like fit, challenge them. Because fit is code for looks like me, or thinks like me, or acts like me, or XYZ like me. When we make hiring more objective, we reduce bias. Audit your data and algorithms. IBM uses tools to detect and correct biases in their AI systems. You can advocate similar approaches in your own organizations. Ask your IT leadership, how is AI being trained? Demand regular audits. Because a biased algorithm does far more harm than no algorithm at all. And it's our responsibility to ensure that technology helps, not hurts. Step 4, embrace sponsorship over mentorship. Employees with active sponsors are twice as likely to get promoted. So don't just advise, create opportunities. Speak up for people in rooms they aren't in yet. Because every time a woman steps into a leadership role, it creates space for others to follow. I don't know why that's making me like emotional. That's weird. Like I've thought about this and I've like said it like 40 times in the last like 2 days, but I don't know. It's making the tear ducts activate. But when we normalize diverse leadership, it helps the next generation envision themselves at the top, creating lasting change. And step 5, speak up and disrupt bias. Challenge vague feedback and biased assessments. Ask for clarifications and specifics. So you might be thinking, how do I make a difference? Here's the thing. We can't fix what we don't change. Organizations must track equity metrics like pay gaps, attrition trends, and promotion rates to hold themselves accountable. You can advocate for this regardless of your role. Ask leaders directly, are we tracking compensation across genders? Are pay rates equitable? Show me the data. Because without measurement, commitment to equity is just a conversation and not a strategy. So your role today is to amplify others' voices. Next time you're in a meeting and someone makes a really good point that goes unnoticed, repeat it with attribution. Comments like, well, Wilma Rudolph made a really great suggestion. Can we revisit it? Next time you see someone's contributions being credited to someone else, actively acknowledge their work publicly. Question feedback. When hiring discussions mention vague terms like fit and not quite ready, challenge them, probe deeper. Ask, what specifically can Mae Jamison do to improve? And encourage transparency. Initiate conversations. Are you okay? Initiate conversations about pay equity with questions like, when was our last pay audit? We often underestimate the influence we hold. Your voice matters. Use it to disrupt biased practices. This would have gone over better if the room were full, but imagine the ripple effect if everyone in here made a commitment to just one of these actions. Change is only slow until it isn't. So, today we've unpacked the problem that meritocracy isn't fair and it's not objective. And biases are systemic, structural, and costly. But measurable steps exist to dismantle them. So what's next? I gotta turn the page. Meritocracy isn't broken. It was built this way. And if it was built, it can be rebuilt, better and fairer. You have more power than you realize. Every question asked, every biased assumption challenged, and every act of sponsorship and advocacy moves us closer to fairness. I'll leave you with this. We don't change bias by hoping it goes away. We change it by acting intentionally every day. So I challenge you to take a step towards equity. Demand transparency, redefine hiring criteria, audit data practices, advocate sponsorship, or just use your voice. Because if meritocracy were real and fair, every leadership table would look like the cast of a Marvel superhero movie, rich with different perspectives, talents, and experiences. We're not there yet, but we can be. So let's rewrite the rules together. Thank you. I do have some questions. Can someone share an experience where you saw bias disguised as fairness in your own organization? Okay.
I work with nations, one of the nation's leading public health agencies, and so they are very scientific, very science-based, and one of the we monitor as a part of statutory guidance. We monitor hiring practices at what grade levels, what pay, and so one of the teams was introducing. They were hiring, I forget for what, but I was trying to introduce to them blind resume reviews. But it did not go over well, even when you had the science to support the reason why we should do it in a blind mechanism. But it was because people were so true to the built-in, I don't know, they had a thing about pedigree, you know what I mean? And so that's really kind of what it came down to. Like if you went to Emory, then you were the creme de la creme, and if you went to Grambling, you were of no consequence. Well, I mean, maybe, you know what I mean? But why don't we have the mechanisms to create resources at some of these less illustrious institutions. That doesn't mean that they're not good institutions. They just have less brand recognition, right? That doesn't mean because we have different set of resources, that doesn't mean that they're not able to be impactful. But it was just a lot of back and forth, even with the numbers, and a lot of, well, how do we know they're gonna work? How do we know they won't? You know what I mean? At some point, you have to just read the room and like, okay, this isn't, y'all are not a good fit for me, or I'm not a good fit for you. But either way, I don't want to be in a circular conversation about what the data says, and you're a scientist and I'm an accountant, and so now we're here together and the numbers are not moving and you can impact it. And so I think sometimes you have to just set it down where they can get it, and then maybe they'll come back to it and see it in a different lens. But I also learned you also have to choose your fighter, because I'm not the best fighter for everything. Sometimes they just love Shantiana, right? So I'm gonna just tell what Shantiana would need to be said at the table, and then when they glorify her for it, like, yes, girl, you go. Listen, good job. Next time we're gonna do it this way, you know. So I think sometimes it's also important to choose the fighter, but I've seen that happen in real time. Because it was an affinity bias, because the students went to a certain university and they felt like that was the only university that could do that thing, which made no sense. But
thank you for sharing that. Anyone else want to talk about workplace inequity? All right, we'll move on to the next one. You were? Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see you. I'm sorry.
Well, I can speak about an experience that I had on my team. So I work in consulting. So in consulting, you usually work for a client, and you have your company that you work for. So it may be like 4 or 5 consultants. And for me, it's very interesting because it's a lot of different demographics on the team, as far as like being offshore, which most of our team is in India, and then I'm onshore. So what I typically see is, even though my manager works for the same company as me, I'm usually isolated, and my manager usually advocates for the offshore team. So for me, how I even find a way to integrate myself is to make sure that I have a relationship with the client, because unfortunately the way it's working out is that my manager that works with offshore but is onshore, I know it's a little bit confusing if you're not in consulting, it's kind of confusing, advocates more for the offshore teams or fills those gaps and speaks up for them. So I make sure that I speak for my work, I advocate for myself on my team with the client, so that I make sure that I stand out in that respect, if that makes sense. So that's something that I am actually currently experiencing, but that's how I've worked through it.
Anyone else? All right, next question. Which of the 5 steps resonated most with you? Step that resonated with you?
This will be short. Speaking up for people who are often overlooked in meetings, when they speak up and they say something that was a good idea, but you always have those people in meetings who talk more than others and get more of the spotlight. So I know a few people on my team, they're softer spoken, and sometimes people can be kind of dismissive. So that really resonated with me. I'm gonna be more aware of that and speak up for my teammates.
So I'm questioning myself now. Was it in the 5 steps, the difference between mentorship and sponsorship? Yes. I'd not heard that put that way before, but not just mentoring and giving my advice and best wishes, but actually taking on ownership of being the spokesperson for that person and putting them forward is a new idea to me, and I appreciate that.
Anyone else want to share their favorite step? All right. What do you think stops people from advocating openly for equity at work?
I would say fear of discrimination. Like in my company, like if you're in consulting, you can be put on the bench and then your livelihood could be jeopardized. I mean, I know you could probably file a complaint or EEOC and all these things, but I think for me, I would say like fear sometimes gets in the way, or depending on their level of leadership as well within the company, that can also create some hesitancy as well.
I'm actually an EEO practitioner, so I think that was kind of interesting that you said that. And I think people sometimes don't advocate, sometimes because you've read the room, or just because you are super comfortable and maybe complacent, right? So sometimes in a meeting, like, I wouldn't do it, but once we got out that room, I would go to certain people like, hey, you mentioned this may be, have you considered this? Sometimes it would be about a job, right? Like, had a posting, and so they're saying, well, we can't find any of this group. Well, where'd you put it? Right? So that's the first question. And then just creating probing questions, but also being able to read the room. I think sometimes people don't speak up because they've read the room and they're like, this is not going to be well received by these people. I'm not going to change their posture. And I think sometimes when you're in that space, you have to reassess, right? Like, okay, who are my key decision makers? Okay, I got them in line. Now, who can I figure out how to advocate? Because this is not necessarily a sponsorship situation, but I have a goal that I need to accomplish, and I need to see of these people who can make that happen. If you can't tell me no, I ain't going to you with nothing. So carry on, moving forward, right? But so I think sometimes it's all of those things, but I think most people never file a complaint because, I mean, if you're a practitioner, you know what it is. You know what I mean? Like, it's some good cases, then it's a whole lot of nada. You know what I mean? So I think it's 97% of EEO cases there's no finding of discrimination, right? Now, that's the cases that went before them. A bunch of them may have been settled in between then, right? Because we don't like to lose. We want to pay out quietly. But I think people are reading the room, and then they're making assessments based on perceptions. And sometimes you have to reconfigure how you're perceiving a situation and then really figure out, okay, like, let me see who my allies are, who the key decision maker is. And some people are not decision makers, they're influencers. So one of my team leads, baby, she run our whole office and ain't got no title. So when she says it, it's a done deal. So I'm not going to my supervisor, I'm going to her. I'm working my relationship here to get her to go do what I need to. I mean, that sounds very manipulative, but in the larger scheme, you know what I mean? I think that's just how actions work. So I could really see what you're saying, why people don't advocate, but I think some of it is they have a perception, they've read the room, and they're just like, oh, this is not, and sometimes they just have to reconfigure how they're thinking.
Very good dialogue here. I'm curious. You mentioned that 97% of EEO cases that go to the EEOC, there's no finding. Is that because? Okay, there's no finding of discrimination because words matter. Is that because there truly isn't a finding, or because people have different lenses of what discrimination is?
The law has a very clear, ambiguous, a very clearly ambiguous idea of what it is.
Okay.
And it's a lot of very, it's all fact pattern based. So just because you pick my dog, maybe you pick everybody's dog. You know what I mean? So
Good. She must be stopped. Goodness.
you're not doing it because I'm black or you're black or because I'm a woman or you're a woman. You just pick everybody dog equally. You know what I mean? But certain things, you know, the fact patterns may line up that this thing that you did this day with all these other facts, there really was discrimination. And many agencies don't want, you know, we don't want to get the truth, so we don't do what we can to close this and
That's a good point.
move around. So most cases, if they're, why would you want them to go to EEOC? Because that can be a very big payout. So we can pay out ourselves, you know, if we in the wrong, we don't need to air our dirty laundry. So I think stuff like that
That's a good point.
should be important. So, then I was
That's a good point. And you actually touched on something else that was really important. I think sometimes we feel like you have to be a decision maker or in a position of authority to make change. Change rarely happens in the top. It happens in the middle. And so aligning yourself with someone who has influence, and influence sometimes is more powerful than actual power. And so aligning yourself with someone who has influence is an effective strategy. So the person that advocated for me at that one job where they said I couldn't do the thing and I could do the thing because I can do anything, was a man. And I think he was a manager at the time, but it was his director or somebody that said that I didn't have the leadership material, that I wasn't leadership material. And so he was like a first level manager. He didn't have a lot of authority or autonomy, but he did have influence throughout the organization. And ultimately I got my shot, and look at me now. Those are all the questions that I have. Does anybody have any questions for me? Any other questions or any other comments that you'd like to make about equity, about Women's History Month, about how you can advocate for yourselves or how you can be an advocate for someone else, sponsorship, all of the things? All right. Oh.
Please, I did have a question. No.
Oh. Okay.
About the data, right? So there's another IT person who did some checks into assessing how these AI systems were working. She did a TED talk about it, and she was a woman of color actually, and talked about some of the barriers built into those systems, and not all of the people who she audited them essentially. And then she gave them the feedback. I think Google was one of them, and a couple others, some big names too. Some of them didn't super love the feedback. So how do you, I guess, encourage your agency to do data? Like, so for example, there are certain new policies that have come out at the federal level that will no longer take into account certain stratifications like race, like well, sex or gender. Well, I guess technically gender, but it may not take into account gender anymore because they're removing certain stratifications. So from your perspective, how do you, in a private realm, how do you encourage people to give you that data? People sometimes are really close to kill to data because they don't really want you. They're not sure what you're gonna do with this. Or don't necessarily want to give it to you. So how do you galvanize them to do that?
Well, let me make sure I understand the question. So the question is, how do you get people to give you data?
That's part of it. And then if there was another case, you had talked about meritocracy and how some of the data is biased,
Mm-hmm.
and they should be looking into those things. How does your company even know that their data meets or doesn't have any of those bias factors in it? You know what I mean? Because they may not be testing. You have to test for that to know.
Correct.
You pass it.
Correct.
So if you're not testing, you're like, yes, it's great. Everybody wears a side light around here. You
Yep.
know what I mean?
Yep. If you're not testing it and auditing it, ignorance is bliss. It really is.
How do you address that when you're not even, they're unaware that they even have a problem? So how do you address that? If you're not the consultant, like, and you just looking at the data, like, I'm not sure this is right. Did you test it? Like, and how you know they're not gonna get mad at you because you asking the question? You just,
My job isn't to regulate your feelings, right? My job as a consultant, as an employer, as someone who practices technology is to clean up the data and communicate to you what it's saying. What you do with that from there, that ain't my job. Right? You can lead a horse to water. My hope, though, when we do those types of audits and present you with the data and present you with the numbers that show how well or not well you're performing, is that you take heed. Because if you're not performing well, you won't last long. That's the fact of the matter. If you are, listen, well, then you know what? We might not be a good fit for each other. We might not be a good fit for each other, but my work here is done. Good questions. Anyone else? All right. Well, thank you very much for having me, Atlas School.
Thank you so much, Teguma. We really appreciated that. Once again, I thank you all for spending your evening with us. We also still have plenty of food, and it's my favorite. It's Lambrusco's, so please grab a plate. Hang out, chat, or we also have open house tours going on. So back here, Caleb, wave. And Jace is back here, and Elisa is up here, and they would love to tour you around our campus and show you what we do. So get some food, enjoy. I'm going to turn the music back up and try not to blast anyone off, and enjoy yourselves. Yeah, thank you.